Howdy, folks, and welcome back to the Practical Microservices stream on this fine Wednesday, technically afternoon by a few seconds now. Last night's book proposal stream went well, I thought. We delivered on what the promises were, showing the major steps of the proposal process if you want to write for PragPog. PragPog, nice. The Pragmatic Pogammers is what, no, Prog is their name. And ended up discussing what a follow-up to practical microservices might look like. And I really enjoyed the way that that discussion turned. The idea of just producing another technical book that's like more technical practices, yeah, I could do that. But that's not what motivates me these days. I love microservices. Obviously, we're doing the stream here still, but I don't know. It's like the technical practices of microservices by themselves aren't the thing that I'm particularly interested in these days. Like, they serve a purpose, and that's enabling flow of work at an organization and enabling people to feel productive and have joy in their work. And so the technical aspects of it are important for sure. But what really interests me is addressing that bigger issue. Like, why are our organizations organized the way they are that stifle all the joy that lead us into those productivity ruts? And so that's kind of the direction a follow-up is leaning in my head right now, more so than the technical issues we left out. I think that if you had an org that wasn't everything that you wanted it to be, that looking at that broader question would move the needle more for you initially than would the focus on a microservices architecture. The way I see it, the microservices architecture exists to enable an org to be able to deliver predictably and not run into the kinds of problems that sap that joy, that lead to the kinds of conflicts that we see. So I don't know. I went into it with a rough idea, like taking the last chapter of the book, continuing the journey and the topics talked about there, and that would be a starting point. And so that the rest of the process would then be, well, how do I figure out how do we continue to tell a story to illustrate these points? But the scope of what I'm after career-wise, not like career ladder, that's not what I mean. Professionally, the thing that I care about is enabling teams to be productive in the long run, to feel empowered, to feel like they matter and have joy in their work. Are there long nights? Sometimes, sure. But we would see that as a problem. Something went wrong, and that's why these heroic actions were needed. So anyway, that's kind of the direction that it went, which wasn't what I was anticipating. So with all that said, let's get straight back into the technical practices, shall we? We are going to, I think today's the day where we finish this work we're doing on the composite component and the device video component. So let us jump into that. I took a little note here. I'm just gonna do this real quick. Keep a work log. Helps me remember what's going on. So hopefully finishing the refactoring on device video component. And past Ethan did a lovely thing and wrote down that we were not quite finished with the task at hand and we were building the serialization deserialization. And so that is a place to jump in. Right, we were putting in place the raw data control. So this file that's open here is a control file we put into the composite component so that we could have an example of what raw data coming from a snapshot message would be, so that we can make sure we're deserializing it correctly. So I just wanted to put this. How do we put it in place already? Composite. Oh, I'm in the composite component. Here we go. Right, we got that far. We had actually defined what that data would look like, and we knew what went on there because of the attributes, and then this requests one, which we are going to switch to being an attribute in just a moment. I want to get the deserialization just working how it is, and then we'll make it an attribute later. So with that said, I'll look at that next. Finish this test. Lovely. So let's run the test real quick. So that's test automated device video transform instance. And where would this break down? What happens if you call clone on nil? Because raw data source URIs will be nil. I'm going to assume, let's not assume. What happens if you call clone on nil? You get nil back. Okay, so that won't be an error. That makes some sense. However, I know we don't need that line, so let's just delete it, shall we? So raw data, we get our raw data, and then our retrieved minutes that we're looking at here. Not retrieved minutes, we're after the requests, and it would be deserialize request. I think, why do I keep putting an extra E in that word? That's so obnoxious. Currently it's still called deserialized retrieved request, or minutes. Sorry, this should be deserialize. No, come on, slow down. We want the test to pull it in. Oh, I put it over here as well. My goodness. I wonder if there's like, you can have prettier that just converts requestees to requests. That would be nice. And also we're not dealing with the composite anymore. That is a copy paste artifact. This would also be device video. So we're going to call the transform on there. And that's enough to get this to fail. So we'll fail at line 8 because there is no deserialize requests method. Yeah, no method that you see right there. So let's change that to requests. And we actually wrote the body of this yesterday. Yeah, parse requests, exactly. So that's what we want there. Now we'll fail because there's no instance method on device video transform. Hopefully. Uh-oh. No, we have a syntax error. That's embarrassing. Oh, in the actual JSON that we're dealing with here. Okay, so what went wrong? Unexpected token at retrieved. Really? I guess is that the workflow there is currently nil. No, that wouldn't be right. So when we go to parse that, we're getting an error. That's curious. What actually is that? So that error would be happening here. This is where we go to parse it. So let's put in a binding.irb real fast. Yeah, put a binding IRB there, and let's rerun that and see what we got for requests. Oh, indeed, yeah. It needs to be wrapped in an object. That is totally valid. There we go. Yeah, yesterday I was struggling with the curly braces. It just wasn't looking right. I knew something was off there, but I didn't notice what it was, so it doesn't really do any good that I noticed it. Just remember fiddling with that towards the end of the day. All right, what did we get that time? Oh, I didn't like that either. All right, let's slow down and think through this. Right. Sorry, that's in the wrong place. That should be there. So the %q, oh, and the left curly brace and the closing right curly brace delimits a string for us the same as if we had just used the double quotes. Did that so that we didn't have to escape the double quotes inside of this thing. So the string that we want would be the curly braces, because it's a JSON object, with a key from device video workflow and this value of retrieve. So I think that's correct now. Let's go ahead and save that and rerun. And where were we expecting the failure at instance not being a method? Great, there we go. Perfect, that's what we wanted. So we are cooking with gas, as they say. I'm not sure why they say that, but it's just an expression I've heard. It'd be terrible to find out like that's has some horrible root or something, but it sounds funny, so maybe we should look up what cooking with gas means. Cooking with gas. Now we're cooking with gas. Originated in the 30s or 40s. It's a slogan thought up by the natural gas industry to convince people to use it. Okay, well, slightly shady. And nothing wrong with slogans, but I don't know. People gotta do what they gotta do to survive. So let's see here. Self.instance raw data. Neat. So that will come back as nil. So clearly, all right. First of all, the whole write enough test to get it to fail when you copy paste a bunch of stuff has some weirdness to it, I think. Like we never would have written all the stuff about retrieved minutes, requests. There we go. So what's going to happen is instance will be nil. So when we try to call requests on it, we'll get no method error. Nil class doesn't have a requests method. And that's what we see. So this needs to actually return something. So what we could start with is device video.build from broad data. Now this should give us an error that requests is not an attribute. Oh, it didn't. So maybe it just ignores the extra keys. That's fine. But I also wouldn't expect this assertion to pass, given that that didn't give us an error, because build only knows how to make sense of the things that are attributes. And we don't have a method on the class itself to be able to set the requests to something. We can get the array for it, but we can't set it equal to something. So that's where we'll come in here and say instance equals all that. And then, no, that's not quite right, is it? Right, we need to take the raw data requests and we want to do serialized requests, raw data requests like so. And then we can just return having built that. Oh, that still didn't work. That's disappointing. Well, let's look at unbinding.irb here. Once had a colleague and early career mentor say that using debuggers is for people who don't really know what's going on. And my use of the debuggers here, I don't know that I disagree with what he said. Oh, we have an empty object. So why do we have an empty object? This raw data object would have been mutated at this point. Wouldn't it have? Because we don't clone it. Wait, how could that be? So we build our raw data here and we call the transform deserialize requests. We're calling that twice, aren't we? Well, that's fine because we don't actually mutate raw data requests. So at this point, we would have just right here. It's properly mutated. Oh, yeah, silly me. We haven't set request to be an attribute yet. Here we go. If we do like so, and we say you're a hash and that your default is a proc that returns an empty hash. And then we just get rid of that. We should be good to go. Haha, look at that. Fantastic. Great. Let's run all of our tests real quick. Oh no, something failed. What failed here? Oh, in the raw data test, I left it as deserialize retrieved minutes. That's so... Man, that's some great copy pasta there. Retrieved. Nope, this would be requests and requests like so. Let's run all that. There we go. Boom. Okay. That changed to make these methods work. Actually finished the snapshotting, making sure that works. How do we write this so that we get enough events to trigger a snapshot? Because unlike, so in the composite component, that overall workflow would have the initiated event. It would now have 3 retrieve sent events. It would then pick up 3 retrieved events, and then finally it's built. So with our test example that we've been doing, that would produce a total of 8 events. However, for device video, we get a requested, a fetched, and then we write a retrieve. So that would be enough. We could just say do a snapshot after 2 messages again. So what we would want to do is let the retrieve command come in, which triggers an initial... Let me pull up the diagram. That would make a lot more sense here. So let the initial retrieve come in, which will generate this requested event. Then we'll write the fetched. And then when we handle the fetched, we will do a snapshot as part of the fetch from the message store. Sorry, the entity store, before we write this retrieve. So if we put our little exit 1 trick in the fetched handler before we write the retrieved, we will read from the snapshot and reconstitute the entity from there. So we'll be able to verify that the snapshotting is working properly. Great. What I wonder now is, do we have an interactive test? We do. Fantastic. So this test here will give us what we need. We don't have to spin up the whole system again. I will do that again before we're all done with this, but this will just make this part go a little bit faster. So let's come here, and we don't have the message store running. Good. So we can just run that down here. Docker compose rm-sf and docker compose up. There we go. We've got the message store running. And then with that, we can Ruby test interactive write retrieve. It did not like this. Oh, right, because the interactive test uses these older control, or this older control interface. Control interface sounds way cooler than module that has some functions in it. There we go. There's our retrieve command. So now we can start the component. Oh, there's one change we need to make before we do that, and that is we haven't enabled persistent snapshots in the entity store. So here's how we enable it on the entity store again. Or rather, here's if you want to add persistent snapshotting to the entity store, given that we've already implemented the transform protocol. Sorry, let me pull that up real quick. Let's open device video. Here we go. So let's see. Nope, that was the control. Let's get the actual entity. There we go. And we'll scroll to the bottom. So if you want to enable snapshotting on an entity store and event tied to the entity store itself, you run the snapshot macro there and then some class that knows how to do the snapshot. And I believe entity snapshot is the one that we have to work with here. So let me scroll down real quick to the composite components, entity store, and yeah, entity snapshot Postgres. That's correct at line 10 there. So let's go back to the device video component, and then we're going to put an interval of 2 in here, which is absurd in a production scenario. But this is just for local development so that we can force a snapshot to occur and observe the results. And then we have previously implemented the transform protocol for our entity class, the device video that you see at line 6 over there on the right. So with that, we can go ahead and start the component. It's doing its thing, and I forgot to put the exit in there for our purposes. But if we now come back to the message store, you can see there's the recorded. And if you look in there, we have our requests hash in there, which is what we expected, although the key doesn't look right. So we'll need to go back and fix that real quick. But that is how you set up snapshots. So let's see here. Sorry, just taking a quick note real fast. Great. Let us investigate why that didn't have anything in it. So that would be... So the issue that we're seeing is our requests hash, the key is just an empty string. That's odd. Wasn't expecting that. So why would that be? So let's go look at the projection is where that would have been set on our entity. And requested dot workflow. Fetched wouldn't set that. Retrieved. The snapshot would have happened in response to here. So we would have had the requested and the fetched. So workflow is null on this requested event. That is not correct. That to me says maybe there's something wrong with our control when we did this. So and then I'm curious, why do we even grab a device ID in a start minute here? What? That looks weird. This test is incorrect. So let's go. I don't know why we're not using a control in this test anyway. So yeah, why are we... This should be using a control. That's literally why we make... It's not the entire reason we make them, but it is a reason why we make them. So let's get rid... Oh, wait a second. This is the... those command helpers. Sorry, this is not messages commands. This is these command helpers over here. That's why we're not using a control, because we're using that interface that we provided there. So device ID and start minute are passed in. So we build our retrieve message. We follow the previous message if there is one. And we build the device video ID. We just never set the workflow here. And is the workflow something explicitly passed? No, it is not. We expect that to have been set as the correlation stream name on this event. So interesting. Okay. I think I see what's going on here. So let's go back to the composite component real quick. And if we look at the handler that actually makes this retrieve call, yeah, we'll call it that. That is in the initiated handler. When we call that, we have this previous initiated message that we're working from. And so we're trying in the interactive test to use this same construct to send the retrieve command to the device video component. So if we open that component though, we don't have a previous message that we're working from here. We're trying to run this test by just calling that retrieve command helper directly, which means either we need to make some sort of a previous message and put that workflow metadata in there, or we would just hand construct the command here and manually set that. I'm kind of favoring that approach because this test is supposed to be like from our perspective, testing our own code. We do have tests in place already to validate that those command helpers work correctly, but do we need to leverage that exact thing within our own code? I'm not sure. I like to go look at what event-tide does in situations like this. So in the account component, are there any interactive tests? There's a write deposit. But in this test, that previous message doesn't provide an integral part of the data. So if it's an integral part of the data, if that is truly necessary, does it make sense to just rely on the correlation stream name property of the metadata to get that? I mean, in favor of that decision, if you want device video component to retrieve something, if you want to ever hear about it having retrieved it, you would have to pass in, when you write your command, you would have to put that correlation stream name property in the metadata. What am I talking about? I keep saying things. Maybe someone watching this doesn't know what it is that I'm talking about. So I can just find it here in the account component example. So if we go to lib, no, not there, commands, and then they have this command file, because there are two different commands you might send to account component, whereas in ours, there's only one, so we didn't need this file here, but, oh, it's hidden anyway. Okay, let's go back to our own code here. And when we write, we would go to our command handler. When we write our initiated event, who's handling writes that retrieve command to the composite component, we stash our current stream name in the initiated events metadata correlation stream name property, right? So that's the way that you get one component to leverage another component and ever be able to know what happened. There's another way we haven't talked about, but that's what we're using. That's what funds transfer uses with account. That's what helps that's what helps the device video component not have to know anything about composite. Device video doesn't know why it's retrieving these videos. It just knows that it is, and it gets a workflow. It stores a workflow on who's asking for it based on that parameter. So, but that little workflow member there is entirely critical to the process here. So I don't really want to relegate that to metadata. And I think we need to make that change and say workflow should have come in as this parameter. But if we do that, what would that look like? When we write this command, we would also pass in the workflow here. Potentially, that's one way we could do that. So let's head back to the device video component where that's defined. So we can open our command helper here, which was literally the file that's already open there on the screen. Good job, Ethan. We could require that as a parameter, like so. Explicitly tell me your workflow. We would still want to do this follow, because when the device video component writes its retrieved message here, we still need that correlation stream name property set there. Well, honestly, it's not getting set from the metadata anyway. That's the reason we take the metadata out and stash it on the workflow here. So the reason we're putting it here is just because we could have multiple different workflows that all need this same thing. And so it's kind of a mechanical bit. Should we have written, instead of storing this as a domain property here, put it, when we follow the retrieve, we would have that on the correlation stream name property of the requested event. And then, oh, right, but we're not dealing with the requested events when we go to do the retrieve. All we have is what's projected onto the entity. So hey, I'm not liking putting that in both places. We could, within here, well, no, we're saying we're not going to put it on the command. It's coming from... The purpose of this helper is you want to retrieve something from me. And in the normal course of operation, when you want me to do something and see the result, you would supply a correlation stream name in your metadata, which would then get attached to the command that's written, which when we handle that command, we use to populate the workflow member on there. I'm pretty sure if we went to the command handler, why do I not see handlers? Oh, because it's down here. We go to our command handlers here for retrieve, we grab the workflow out of that correlation stream name. Yeah. So the only way to get that in place with this interface is to supply a previous message, which is exactly what any client of this would be doing. Which means that without a previous message, this isn't the right way to write this command. So I think we're just going to change the test. That is the reasoning I've arrived at. I think I've demonstrated on this stream that I am not afraid to take the time to go change things that I think need changing. That's why we're still working on this. Almost a month after the meetup. So, I mean, to be fair, if we do this for an hour a day, and sometimes there are interruptions and other things to talk about. So, like in a real work environment, all these changes we've been making probably would have maybe taken a day. Less time now that we know how to do it all. So, yeah, we're going to construct an actual command message here. So retrieve, instead of being commands retrieve, we're going to go to our controls and get commands retrieve dot example. Now this is really important then, that this control here, and it does set a correlation stream name on there, because we wouldn't ever expect to get one of these that doesn't have that. So I wonder if that command client should require that there be a previous message. Because that's what we're saying. Like, what's the scenario? Like in the account component, you could have an interface that's just like deposit money into the account. And so there might not be some surrounding context for sending a deposit command, whereas funds transfer does a surrounding context when you're moving funds from one account to another. But you could just do a deposit. You might model that as a separate stream, because maybe there are other steps to validate that the deposit is valid. But with the device video component, why would you ever just retrieve a video because? But suppose that came up and you didn't have a meta or a correlation stream name on that event, it would use that empty string And then if for some reason you wanted to do that again, you'd get the same empty stream, which means it would already have been retrieved. So we would just rewrite. Well, we wouldn't write the event because of idempotent, we would have already written it for the empty string. I think if you're going to do this, you need a previous message. This doesn't make any sense unless you provide a previous message. So we are going to just make that a requirement for this interface. Now, if we do that, I think that will break one of our tests here. Right, so we have the one that does take the previous message, and we have one that doesn't require it. That's this one. So let's just fix what we're working on, and then when we run the test, we'll see where that broke. Yeah, so I guess if we were to run this right now, we'll get a failure that, well, we do need to put back those other two things, right? So if we run that, line 10 will say, hey, you didn't supply the previous message parameter. Missing keyword, previous message. There it is. Okay, so good. That's what I want to see, actually. But that's not how we actually want to handle that. We've got the retrieve. So is it messaging? If we go to our handler, wait, no, this one right here, what's dependent? Messaging Postgres, right? So if we go messaging Postgres, right, we can just call that with, we're trying to write this retrieve message and the stream that we want to write it to. So we need a stream name here. That would be equal to device video command. Oh, command. Let's spell that correctly. How about? And it would be retrieve.device video ID, I believe is what we want. So then we write that to stream name. We don't worry about the expected version because it's a command. Let's restart the message store here. Rerun that. So now if we come over here, sorry, you can do it, reconnect, there we go. And if we look at this now, we can see that correlation stream name, sum stream 1. Works. And then with that now, we could start that again real quick. Script start. And there's our recorded. And now we see the sum stream in there. And that looks correct. Of course, we haven't done the rehydrating from it step, so we'll do that next. But I do, listen, I want to get short of showing the snapshotting stuff final. So we're gonna redo that real quick. So if we go to lib, device video component, store, not start, curses, that was the wrong one. Like so, I am just gonna delete that real quick so that we can retype it. And then we'll open lib device video component, device video right there. And restart our message store. Like so. Now do I want in this little clip to have our failure bit? No, I don't think that will be helpful for the pedagogy. Okay, so here's actually like take 4 of this. All right, so if you want to enable persistent snapshotting in your event-tied component, here's the extremely high-level short version of what you need to do. In your entity store, you would add another line here for snapshot, and then you pass it a class that knows how to do the snapshot. And so the one that ships with event-tied is entity snapshot Postgres. And we're going to add one little change here so that we can see it happening. This interval option says after how many events of projecting would I write a snapshot. We're setting that to 2, which is absurd in a production environment, but we really want to force the snapshot so that you can see that it happened. And then in the entity class that you actually want to snapshot, in this case, it's this device video class that's here on the left, we have previously defined the transform module. Needs to be called transform and have a self.instance and self.raw data. Raw data takes the contents of the stored snapshot and produces an instance of the entity. And raw data takes an instance of the entity and produces the raw data that you would want to actually persist into the snapshot. So that's all there is to doing snapshots in Eventide. I like that take. We'll stick with it. So let me take the note on that. New timestamp. That was at about 46 minutes in. I'm going to take those out and post them on YouTube so that they're helpful, but then also from all the folks I watch who do streaming, no one ever finds you on Twitch. You have to be found elsewhere. And so that's what that's for. So thanks for bearing with that awesome production of a stellar YouTube video. Now let's do our little bit here where we're going to actually put in deliberately a failure. So when we go to fetched, for each of our unfulfilled workflows, we're going to write a retrieved message. And so it's just after this fetch is where we need to exit. So we'll put that exit in right there, like so. And if we come back to, oh no, I didn't actually show it working. Sorry, we got to do that again. I really need this video. It's silly. Go back to the top here. All right, let's try it again. We got to remember to actually run the code so that we can see the snapshot get produced. Empty message store, totally exciting. So hey, let's say you want to add snapshotting to your Eventide component. Here's how you would do that. First of all, in your entity store, you would come and add snapshot and then a class that knows how to do the snapshotting. In this case, we want the entity snapshot Postgres variety that just ships with Eventide. And then for our purposes, we are going to use this interval option to say after how many events we would like to do a snapshot. 2 would be ridiculous for production, but for our local purposes, just so that we can force a snapshot to occur, we're putting that so we can demonstrate. And then notice here on line 6 that this entity store has a device video entity. Over in that corresponding class, you have to implement the transform protocol, as it's called. You put a module in your class called transform that has 2 methods, self.instance, which takes like the raw data that was snapshotted to the message store, and then you produce an instance of your entity as the return value. And then you also implement the raw data method, which takes an instance of your entity, and then you return the raw data that you would like to post into the message store. So with that in place, we're just going to run a quick test to show this working. This is going to write a command to the message store, and then we'll just start the component here. And then we can come over to the database viewer where I have MessageDB open. We hit reload. There's that initial command. This particular example does a requested event and then a fetched. Then when we're handling the fetched, we run the projection, which picks up requested and fetched, producing our recorded event, which is the snapshot. And right there, you can see all of the data in our entity is present and persisted. So now when we do future projections on this stream, we can start from that snapshot rather than having to redo every single event in the event stream. All right, we're going with that one. Update the timestamp. That one was at like 49:28. Oh, it's fun. All right, so now then, for the purposes of our stream, because that's what you're all here for, let's go back to that handler real quick. not the command handler. We want the events handler. And then after this projection, we can put our exit 1 in there. And we will rewrite that command, verify that it's there. It is. And now we can start the component, and we exited. Fantastic. Also what we wanted. So we get requested, fetched, and recorded. So now we come back here and remove the exit. And when we rerun the component, what I expect to see is a retrieved event being written after the recorded. And there it is. So our component is now fully snapshot capable. Great. Let's look for any obvious problems that we might have. We made the previous message required. Right, so we're not done yet. We need to... That one test will fail because of the missing keyword. And the correct fix for that is as follows. Get rm test automated commands retrieve. If the test fails, just delete it. In this case, that actually is what we want to do, but there's a second part to it. We want to move test automated commands retrieve previous message to test automated commands retrieve.rb. That's what we want to do. Because that is now the default way for that to operate. And now when we run all of our tests, we still pass. Okay, there we go. All right, so now let's look at our get diff again. Workflow control. We added, I'm pointing to my screen as if you can see that. We added the raw data control. And we dried up the controls so that the actual definitions of what they are more centralized, and various things leverage those. So that increases afferent coupling, but workflows are stream names. That's not going to change anytime soon. And that's not just because we're not going to do more work on this starting real soon. Oh, trailing white space. Would you look at that? That is in device video in the instance method. So let's come here real quick. And what line is that? This one. Embarrassing. There we go. All right, start our diff over. Scrolling, transform protocols in place. It's not called retrieved minutes anymore. That's good. We've got our snapshot stuff in there. These tests are actually written. We had a few new files though, right? Yeah, so let's go ahead and add everything, and then we'll do a cached, which would have made sense to do right from the beginning, but we didn't. So lots of control changes. There's that workflow example where we have the stream with the incrementing that we can use. We changed requests to a hash. That's it. We looked at everything. Although here's the file that we deleted. That's a shame that that's how it's registered, because right, we deleted this file that's on the screen right now and then renamed the other one, but whatever, it works. So git commit device video component is snapshot capable. I was debating putting the word fully there, but that just seems like wasted words to me. I'm excited about that. So we took the feedback from the meetup. In the process, we dove into how snapshotting works in Eventide. We implemented it into components. We did so for components where it wasn't just a straight up, we have these simple primitives, and so the framework mostly takes care of it for us. We had to actually deal with hashes, deal with typed arrays, and yeah, let's, I don't know, fire this bad boy up one more time here and run the whole system again. Or let sleeping dogs lie. Which one of these runs? There we go. That one runs the message store. That one does the write, and this is where we would start the component. Why is this? Oh, right, because we were just messing around with that. Let's just close that all right now before I accidentally edit something and then get worried about it. And let's start this component. Script start. And come back here. We'll write our build command. What? Oh, neat. So that client gem change that we made, or the controls change that we made, broke our test over here. And this is precisely why we run things. And so how would we have caught that? We know that this component is using that gem. So when we made any change to that gem, it would be on us as the author of the gem to make sure that our clients aren't broken by the change that we made, which is what we're doing. So, you know, that's good stuff. So where did that? It looks like an old version of the gem, actually. Uninitialized constant. Controls, commands, build. Here we go. Controls, commands, build. Yeah, here's where we were leveraging these. So similar changes go like ding, 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 and ding, 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 ding. And you have to say that when you are editing something. So I don't make the rules. There we go. That works. Everything is flowing. We've got a bunch of snapshots for both components. There's our device video snapshot. We got our built. And there we go. We could find the actual file here. I don't remember if found from... No, I think I explicitly turned that off. Here, let me just... Here's where our output is. Right there. We're just going to grab that and open it real fast. Does not exist. Oh, I missed the leading slash there. Isn't there a way to go to the beginning? Yeah, there we go. Okay. Open is not working from my terminal for some reason, and I don't know why. Whatever. Oh, it's not whatever. I want to find it. So it's in composite component temp. Can we just open right here? Yeah, there we go. So if we go to temp and these don't get cleaned up. Which one is it? It's the one with a bunch of ones in it. Right there. Here's our output. I don't know if I ever showed what we're actually building with this, but here it is. Don't know if the sound's going to come through, but yeah, we just made a composite video with 3 10-second clips of Never Gonna Give You Up, because that's what we did. All right, cool. So let's see here. We need to commit this change. First of all, echo.ds store, and we will put that into git ignore. Check our diff here. So we changed our git ignore and we modified those to follow the new interface that our other components client gives us. Did I add? I didn't. Okay, git add, git commit, device video client is correctly used. No. And we also dealt with the harsh realities of using OS 10, Mac OS it's called now, At least I didn't call it OSX. Cool. Well, that wraps up our changes to the composite component and the device video component. I'm really happy to be at this point. We only have 5 minutes left, so I think I'm going to end it a little bit early. That's great. So let's go raid Cool AJ86. He's a good guy. I remember how to do this. Raid Cool AJ86. Do you raid channel? Is it at cool? I think it's just like this, like that. Yeah, so I'm gonna say thanks for coming. Happy coding. We're gonna go raid AJ real quick. I'm gonna put on my headphones so that I could actually hear what he's saying, and I'll watch him for a few minutes. Raid ready. Yeah, thanks for coming again. Happy coding. Oh, it looks like there's a little countdown. Halfway there. Bringing you massive viewers, AJ. Here we go. See y'all. Happy coding. Still use this, which